Well, Angie Singer-Keating, welcome to Data Security Over Coffee, Navigating the Perils of AI and Cybersecurity. Say that really fast. Not exactly sure what this is all about. We're having trouble streaming to Facebook. This may be an issue on Facebook's end. We'll just remove it from Facebook then. Later. Look at that. Change on the fly. Whoa, we have 175 people are viewing right now.
I'm so jealous you get to see that stuff and I don't.
I know. And I have the comments. So when people want to send in a question. But first of all, before we get started, I just want to say congratulations to my little sister, Angie Singer-Keating. She has for many years served on the Ben Franklin Technology Partners Board of Directors in a voluntary capacity, mind you. And most recently, she was asked to take on the role and be promoted, mind you, to president of the board for Ben Franklin Technology Partners of Central Pennsylvania. And I think that's a big deal. And she doesn't like to toot her own horn, and she doesn't like to have the spotlight because that's the way she is, and that's fine. But you know what? That's a big deal. And I'll tell you why. For two reasons. Number one, in the world of information technology, and I can say this because it's our show, we suck at being able to promote women into information technology. That's number one. And number two, it demonstrates that somebody that started a small, itty-bitty little company in central Pennsylvania has the innovative wherewithal to be recognized for their talent, to then be asked to take over as board president. That's a big deal. So kudos to my little sister.
Well, I appreciate that. And you're right. It makes me incredibly uncomfortable.
That's why I do it.
But I have a big brother who constantly has his foot in my backside, pushing me out there. Yesterday, the Studio 814 appearance, I was really uncomfortable and super nervous. But Rebecca, the host, she was awesome and made me feel right at home. But yeah, I get what you're saying. And I know the need to be out there. It just makes me uncomfortable when I'm kind of sometimes it feels like I'm being held up as some kind of standard bearer. And I don't think I've done anything special other than just have a passion about a career path that, I'm also on largely because of you. I don't think I would have ever been a business owner if it were not for, wanting to work with you and you asking me to do this. So.
And you were drunk and you said, yes, it's like a date. So anyway, okay, so now we have to be serious. So I don't want to be thrown off the internet or whatever you get, what happens. I don't know. Okay, so we talk about, or everybody talks about, artificial intelligence and machine learning and all of this kind of jazz. And as I've often said, I, Joe Harford, am challenged being able to use my phone, even being able to position it correctly, as you can tell. So what we want to do today is a few different things. Number one, we want to talk about, okay, what is AI? But more importantly, not only what it is, but from Angie's perspective, when she works with clients in her capacity to manage risk, what does that mean in that environment? So let's start off, if it's okay with you, let's start off with just a basic general understanding of, okay, what is artificial intelligence? What does that mean to a business owner? What does it mean to an IT manager, a CISO, whatever you want to call it? Why should they even care? Let's start there.
Well, they should care because it's whether their employees are telling them or not, there are probably folks in their organizations that are using it. And that's going to naturally introduce risk. When we talk about what it is, that is such a big thing to unpack. Are we talking about through the context of what is it as a large language model? What is it as in when it is a private large language model that an organization at an enterprise scale builds on their own, where they're going to take their own information to then apply artificial intelligence to it. It's massive. Is it embedded in tools that you're using, and whether or not you even know that's going on? So from the what is it perspective, that's exactly the first question that folks need to be asking within their own organizations. How is it currently being used by folks in their organization? And where I'm seeing it being used is, first of all, it's being embedded into tools that employees are asking to use. You know, we had it here at Reclamere. There are some tools that you asked to use in the sales and marketing group.
Right.
And, you know, my response was yes, except there are some things around that tool having an API hook into our email that I was very uncomfortable with.
So let's talk about that. So let's use Reclamere as an example. So everybody that's in the sales and marketing role is always trying to figure out what's the next big thing to generate lead generation, right? Everybody's looking for new business, net new business.
Sure.
We know how to grow business across the install base, so net new business. So from my perspective, as somebody who drives that activity in the organization as well as the rest of our team, I'm all about, oh my gosh, there's this Copilot thing, and there's this Google thing, and all this other kind of crazy jazz where I can type in some stuff and it comes up with, here are the 3 best questions to ask a prospect, and this is how you're going to move them through the sales funnel fast. So for me, it's like, it makes sense. It's no different than if somebody says, sends me a question that is more technical in origin. Quite frankly, I go directly back to ChatGPT and look for that resource if it's available.
Mm-hmm.
So in that example, so what's the big deal? Like, why are you going to come down the hallway and yell at me because I want to do this? Like, what's the big deal?
Well, as I explained to you before, I'm not going to come down the hall and yell at you if you are using it from a research perspective and you are copying and pasting general information into a tool like a ChatGPT or a Claude. That's not a concern for me. What's a concern for me is when folks ask to use tools that are trying to make you more efficient by hooking right into, for instance, your email, you know?
Yeah, but that just makes it more efficient, because right now what I have to do is I have to type something into ChatGPT. I got to copy and paste it. The damn thing doesn't align correctly. It's a funky font. It's highlighted. It's a total waste of my time. And I just want to be more efficient. I'm supposed to make money. So you're telling me I got to click things and I got to take on these extra steps, and that's stupid. So just connect it.
Well, this is a perfect example of how you make risk-based decisions in an organization and how governance should work. So that's okay, maybe, to have an API into one of our account managers' email, because our account managers aren't getting spreadsheets that have potentially employees' social security numbers in them that are unredacted potentially. You're the owner of a company. You have highly confidential, highly sensitive, and in some cases regulated information coming into your mailbox.
Right.
I absolutely don't want anything hooking into your mailbox. And at this point in time, I can't say that that's forever, but I can say, based on your role as an owner of a company and the type of information I know that you and I are exposed to, I have big concerns about that.
Why? What's the big deal if I have an API connected in my, so what? What does that mean to me?
Because unless I have a really strong understanding of whatever that tool set is that's going to be have an API into your email, it has access to your email.
Well, who has access to my email?
Whatever platform is getting into your email to help you work more efficiently.
So you're telling me that if I say to you, I want to have Copilot, or whatever the Google tool is, I have no idea what the hell it's called, Genie or something, and I want this thing connected into my email, it has access to my, so what's the big, all I'm doing is I'm just creating emails. That's all I'm doing. Like, what's the big deal that it has connection into my email?
Well, first of all, we work with a lot of healthcare organizations, so we're a regulated business associate.
Okay.
So the first thing I want to do before we're going to just turn Copilot loose for everybody is I want to get a signed business associate agreement from Microsoft in whatever capacity I need that for Copilot. I haven't had the time to do that research at this point to find out, is the current BAA that we get as a with our current state of Microsoft licensing that we get, does that also cover the services that we're getting with Copilot? For instance, we talked about we would like to be able to increase efficiency on client calls for note taking. And so we're looking at some of the note taking artificial intelligence tools that are out there that would help us do that. Number one, we're going to have a workflow where we get permission from our client to use that. Number two, I'm only considering tools that have an actual HIPAA compliant component and then have a SOC 2 type 2 report where I can verify that they actually do what they say they do.
You're not penetrating my brain.
Okay.
This is what I'm not getting. So
well, that's a scary place. I try to avoid going there, but go ahead.
My wife will tell you the same thing. I'm still not getting from you, what is the big deal if this thing is connected to my inbox? You tell me that Bill Gates looks at my email?
I'm telling you that there's the potential that there are algorithms that are going to be scanning your email content, your entire mailbox.
So that's right there. That's where the conversation has to get to for somebody like me in sales and marketing, somebody like me in operations, somebody like me, very scary, that's out there in small, medium, or large organizations. It's like, oh my gosh. So Angie Singer Keating, you happen to be the CISO of XYZ manufacturing company or XYZ bank. And I'm telling you, I went to a conference and I saw this lady and she told me that I can cut my processing time by 50%. We got to sign up for that today.
Yeah.
And you're coming back. So what I'm saying is now you're telling me that there is an issue that an API, which stands for
Application Program Interface.
Thank you. There's an API connected to my inbox that basically will have the opportunity, will have the availability to see all of the contents of my inbox.
Potentially.
Okay. That's scary. Now we're having a different conversation. So when you start talking about risk, now I'm understanding it as a business owner or as a director when I come back from a conference and I'm like, whoa, this is the greatest thing. We have to do this right away. Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. So now I understand it.
And that's just one type of risk.
Okay. What's the other type of risk?
Well, for instance, there is, when we talk about it in the capacity of sales and marketing, we have the ability to use tools like Midjourney or DALL-E to create graphics. Well, who's to say whether or not the graphic that's generated is already out there and copyright protected? And so you're going to have staff people that are going to just generate AI images and then you're going to throw them up on your website. That's terrifying. I would not want to be the recipient of the letter from Getty Images telling me to cease and desist. And by the way, just because you used this copyrighted image, you now owe us $1 bajillion. Right. That's terrifying to me.
Okay.
As a business owner, another concern I have is let's say we're going to use a marketing company and we're going to get them to help us generate content. They're going to generate so much content for us. Right. And they're going to just turn around and use AI to generate that content because we know the average marketing company is not a bunch of cybersecurity experts and they don't have cybersecurity experts writing content. Well, we better have a workflow where all of the content that they generate is reviewed and potentially put through plagiarism checkers. And we better also make sure that we review that content to make sure that it acts like it's actually legit. Did the artificial intelligence tool have a hallucination where it's saying something that is just absolutely untrue?
Yeah, but that's the marketing company's problem. That's not my problem.
No, it's not. You and I spent 23 years building a reputation. I'm not going to put content out there that makes us look like we're the, ambulance chasing FUD scammers that are always trying to throw out scare tactics
So
to win business.
so
I'm
you're
not
talking
gonna,
about
I'm not going to do that.
you're talking about reputational risk
Yes.
that people often don't think about when they look at new technology or new services or new whatever.
Hey, let me say this. AI is brand new, but new technology is not new. And that goes for everything from cybersecurity back 20 years ago to my days working in land surveying and civil engineering. When computerized land surveying tools came into being, where you could measure distances electronically and you would basically point and shoot to get distances. I remember survey techs who would come in from the field and they would have measurements or calculations that were just simply nonsensical. And you would say to them, Steve, this says that that monument is 1,045 feet from the traverse point, which is where you set up your instrument.
Okay.
You could throw a stone to it. It had to be less than 50. Did you not see a problem with this measurement? Well, that's what the instrument said. So it's the same type of risk where if you don't have expertise, experience, and educated technicians or educated people reviewing content to see if something is just nonsensical.
So it's trust but verify.
Yeah, I don't even think it's trust. I think it's review and verify.
So can you see an instance where, whether it goes back to my example of an API connected to my inbox or what have you, that is very, when you think of how artificial intelligence is being used right now,
Mm-hmm.
that is very frightening to you, like a scenario that you could actually see occur, that you would sit back if one of our clients came to us with that scenario as an incident, and you would be like, oh my gosh, this is bad.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny that you asked this because right now, myself and Natalie Suarez, who is our guest at our in-person AI risk symposium seminar that we're doing in Harrisburg in June.
That's right. We're going to be putting a plug in for that almost at the end of the show today.
Well, she and I are brainstorming on, the different areas that we're going to be covering. And one of them is that over the lunch break, we're going to be doing an actual incident response tabletop exercise and based on scary things that could happen with AI and what we need to think about. One of them is your robot that works on artificial intelligence is hacked and I don't know, somehow harms one of your employees. And you have to investigate this. How did things go so wrong? How did the attacker get in? These are kind of some of the different scenarios. And some of them seem like really wild and far-fetched when we talk about them. But I am really nervous about the impact on human life of the use of artificial intelligence. And I'm concerned because at the end of the day, artificial intelligence is technology. When things go wrong with technology, who's on the front lines to try to figure out why? Incident response investigators, incident response people.
Sure.
So those are some of the concerns that I have. We now have to go back and revisit, and this is some of the things I've been talking to some of our clients about as we start looking at when they share with us different artificial intelligence tools or different vendors they're going to be using. And if we manage their vendor risk, I look at it and I say, wait a minute, this technology works on artificial intelligence. Do you have do you have in your acceptable usage policy the terms under which your employees can use AI? Well,
You
no.
bring up
Okay. So now we need to revisit the acceptable use policy. Wait a
Yeah.
minute. What about your vendor risk management policy or your vendor due diligence program? We need to disclose this up front that it's going to be used and how is it going to be used? And should every person in the organization have access to it? And so now we're going back, and I want to make it really clear. We don't have all the answers. And I think anybody that presents themselves as having all the answers is is really scary. You need to run away from them as fast as you possibly can. We just know a lot of questions to ask, to stimulate thought, to provide leadership, and then take our, hundreds of years of combined expertise in cybersecurity with our team and start to think through the what ifs and at least put some guardrails up there, help our clients with those guardrails.
I mean, I would, and I am obviously not the technologist in the company, but I mean, from a common sense perspective, if you think about how many years ago the wave of technology was, we're going to move to the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have a private cloud. We're going to have a semi-cloud. We're going to have a fat cloud. We're going to have a skinny cloud. Clouds. Oh my God, clouds, right? And for those organizations that did not stop and think and be thoughtful like you're talking about and be very strategic in their questioning, jumped in full force and probably had some bad experiences. And I would offer from a common sense perspective, I think that artificial intelligence is that thing where, listen, okay, it's people are familiar with ChatGPT, people are familiar with Claude, people are familiar with a number of different tools that are out there. And now it comes down to, okay, you have to very methodically go through your organization and talk about how are you going to govern the use of this technology. No different than, okay, hey, there's these cell phone things and we're going to give everybody a cell phone and BYOD and blah, all this stuff. Whoa. How are you going to govern that?
Mm-hmm.
If you say everybody can bring whatever phone they want and it's their own device, and now they've got an issue with what's on that device, what does the business do? So to me, this is no different. So from a governance perspective, there's a question. Well, somebody can't type. What advice do you have for the use of AI from a governance perspective?
Mm-hmm.
I put that together. Go ahead.
From a governance perspective, we need to answer 5 basic questions: who, where, what, when, and why.
Okay.
So first of all, what do you want to govern? Because not all artificial intelligence is the same. Not all use cases are the same. Who should be able to use it? Because the people that are going to use a certain tool in marketing probably have more leeway than people that have maybe your system admin folks, or people that are coding that are coding highly confidential intellectual property, that if they put that code out there trying to be more efficient in their code writing or debugging, has just given away your secret sauce, and caused a problem.
So time out. So
Yeah.
what you're saying to me is, so if I go, as a user of ChatGPT as an example, let's use that as an example because that's what I use.
Yeah.
And I put in there proprietary information about Reclamere, and I'm doing that because I want to come up with a more succinct explanation of whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then ChatGPT gives me that response, and then I can regurgitate it over and over until I really like it. You're telling me that the information that I just put into ChatGPT now belongs to somebody else?
Potentially, yeah.
That's pretty scary.
And one of the biggest things, companies can protect intellectual property 2 ways. They can patent it, or they can hold it as trade secret. One of the most important things around trade secret is that you keep it secret, because once you put it somewhere publicly, you no longer have that ability to term it trade secret. And patenting is great, but patenting is only great if you have the resources to actually police and enforce your patent. So many smaller organizations, many entrepreneurs, startup people, visionaries, these great ideas, they're going to protect it as a trade secret until they get to a point if they get to a point where they have something that is truly patentable with the resources to actually get a patent and enforce that patent. So yes, most definitely, we need to train any user that wants to use artificial intelligence in what is okay to put into a tool and what is not okay to put into a tool.
Okay.
And if we're going to have people using APIs that connect into email, I'm harping on this email issue because so many of us use our mailboxes as de facto file storage.
No, I don't believe it. Nah,
We get reports that have spreadsheets of hundreds of confidential records or regulated information like patient health information or social security numbers or bank account information, where we're just used to getting these reports and they just get dumped to us and we just take them, we use them. And most people are kind of pack rats. They're afraid to ever delete something. But it's sitting in that mailbox. It could be sitting in a file folder. It could be archived, but it's there. And once you're allowing that interface, that access, you're potentially also allowing another party in there. And God only knows then where they're shipping that information or allowing that information to go.
Ooh. So one of Reclamere's very good friends, we would call him a FOR, friend of Reclamere, Bill Balint,
okay,
from IUP,
mm-hmm.
writes in the following. Thank you, Bill, for participating. I really like that. When the internet first became a commercial entity about 30 years ago, no one could have predicted Amazon, Netflix, YouTube of cloud computing. How do we govern AI in a manner that can be flexible enough to adapt quickly to a landscape that will change constantly for a generation? Nice job, Bill. You may have stumped my little sister. So we'll see. What would you like me to read that question again, Angie, for clarification? Or are you good?
No, because the answer is simple. Nobody knows right now. Nobody knows. And here's
So how do you govern it though? How would you, what's the advice you give to somebody when the question comes up? How do you govern AI in a manner that can be flexible enough to deal with the ongoing change of the landscape?
It has to be governed from a risk management perspective first.
Why do you believe
foremost.
that?
Because if it is simply viewed through a business efficiency and profit driven lens,
right,
there are going to be unacceptable risks and foreseeable risks that could have been prevented. Let me give you an example. Right now, IT already has a hard time getting a seat at the table when new tools and technology are going to be introduced into a business. CEO, COO, some manager goes to a conference, hears about something that is amazing. It's going to change your business. It's going to give you a competitive advantage. You're going to make so much more money. And they come back and they make the decision to use it. They sign the contract. And then right when it's time to start implementing it, that's when IT gets a seat at the table and says, hey, we're going to use this new tool. And now that's what sets IT up to be the people of no. Oh, right. They're the people that get in the way of progress and efficiency, and all they want to do is say no. No. If that executive came back from that conference and sat down with their head of risk management and IT and said, I heard about this great new tool, just like you did when we were at that conference. Right. I want to use it. And I started asking you questions. And I started to explain it to you around, what are we going to do if this happens? What are we going to do if that happens? Should everybody have it? Will the efficiency outweigh the potential for the risk? Do we have the mechanisms in place to actually enforce the controls that we're going to implement? Those questions, that conversation is now more important than ever before. And here's the most challenging part of it. Bill is absolutely right about 30 years ago with the internet. You were also right about, 15 years ago with the whole BYOD company-owned device thing. The challenge now is that these questions are going to, we're leveling up. Anybody that games knows that every level is harder. Whatever it is, whether it's, old school Tetris or whatever, the next level comes at you harder and faster than the last one. what's about to come at us right now with AI is harder and faster than I believe anything we've seen so far. And it makes risk management and upfront conversations around business processes so much more important to get IT and risk management at a seat at the table very, very, very early. Let us say no, or let us say yes if, after there's been sufficient due diligence, and we're happy to help you find another tool that will get you the same result, but just do it in a better, more secure, more regulatorily compliant manner, if that's an issue, and do it in a way right from the get-go where we're all working together, we're all rowing in the same direction, instead of setting those of us in risk management and IT and cybersecurity up to be the people that have to tell you no and be the wet blanket saying, oh, here are all the concerns we have.
Well,
I don't know if that answers Bill's question.
No, I think from my perspective, it does. And I'm sure that, Bill will respond if it doesn't. But
well, and let me say this.
Okay.
She's
on a roll.
Well, there's a big concern I have right now of the knowledge drain that's leaving the industry for retirement right at a time where experience is more important than ever before. We watched all the mistakes that were made around, the start of the internet. And then we watched all the mistakes that were made around Web 2.0. And we've watched every mistake that's been made with every new technology coming down the pike. Right. And so, I mean, heck, from going from DOS to Windows, for goodness sake. And so we, of a certain age group, have incredibly valuable experience. No, we may not be experts in artificial intelligence, but we sure as heck are experts in what can go wrong when technology is adopted too fast, without enough planning, without enough forethought, without enough risk management, and when profit and business efficiency are driving all of the decision making.
I think there's two things.
That's a terrible time right now for us to be losing all of that brain power.
So I think there's two things. Number one, I think that IT professionals have to continue to do a better job, because I think they've done a lot better job in the last than they did 30 years ago and even a decade ago of being able to communicate in a way that's not filled with jargon and hurts people's brains. And that's why they get stuck in the basement, right? You've got to be able to have that business conversation. I think the other thing is that senior executives have to say that whether it's the CIO, the CTO, the CISO, or whatever acronym you got, if you're an information technologist, you have to be brought to the table with the same level of respect and inclusion as you would with somebody in accounting, finance, operations, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the other part of how do we deal with AI, to your point, not waiting until after you buy something. How often do we talk to people in higher education and somebody goes out and buys something, and then all of a sudden IT doesn't find out till something is wrong. Somebody in manufacturing goes out and buys something and IT finds out after the fact, or right. whatever industry it is that we service. We hear that on an ongoing basis. And so there's got to be a vetting process. There has to be an onboarding process that if you're going to do anything at all that involves technology, and now especially with AI, there needs to be, and you talked about it earlier, there needs to be a workflow process of how does that come into the environment, and what does that look like? Now, if you as the technologist, if you as the information security expert goes to senior leadership and explains all of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they still want to move forward, and they're going to own that business risk, and they're going to be responsible for it, you've done your job.
Exactly.
But I think that it's no different than we work with customers that are saying, listen, we're involved in an M&A strategy and we want to go out and buy X manufacturer. And so we help them take a look at what is the current cyber posture of that acquired business. Yeah. And they come back with a score that says, out of 800, their score is 450. Wow, that's kind of bad. Well, but you know what? We've given you the data. To me, it's no different than what we're talking about with artificial intelligence.
Oh, so, yeah. I mean, risk acceptance is a legitimate risk management decision strategy.
It is. But, you know, I think what happens a lot of times is it doesn't seem like people that are, if you have less than 1,000 employees, that people really look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we
Well,
start.
and it's also super important that you're getting context with the risk. So, for example, when we help clients, when we do their vulnerability management, okay, they end up with a report after a scan saying that there's a machine that has log4j on it. Well, that's a super high risk and that's been compromised. But guess what? Number one, there might be a legitimate reason why that's there. Number two, there may be enough compensating controls in place that it does not present a risk. You know, the CVSS score is an indicator of threat level. It's not an indicator of risk level. And so it takes experience. And, you know, we always hear about, how do I get into cybersecurity? It's really hard to get into cybersecurity. Everybody wants experience. Yes, because it takes experience, and you can only do it well when you have a lot of experience to put context around what it is that you're analyzing, whatever it is that you're measuring, you're scanning, you're protecting. And again, it's going to be the same way with artificial intelligence and the use of it within organizations.
So Wednesday, June 26th of this year, we are going to be hosting, along with ConnectWise, our partner, and your new friend, Natalie Suarez.
Who's super sharp, by the way.
She is super, super smart. If you take a look at her LinkedIn profile, and she's just a nice person. Like when you correspond with her, like she's a very nice person.
Yes.
We're going to be hosting invitation only, an event talking about artificial intelligence, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think one of the coolest things is actually being able to have an activity during the event for people to kind of get an idea of what a tabletop exercise may look like, because we still come across people that, hey, I have an IRP. Oh, that's great. Well, when was the last time you did your tabletop exercise? Never. That's really great. And so being able to do that, I think, is going to be a worthwhile takeaway for the group that's going to be there. Our friends, David Taylor and Carl Morera with the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, are gracious enough to host us in their absolutely gorgeous building on State Street, which is one block down from the Capitol. So it's going to be a really good event. Also coming up next month on our Data Security Over Coffee, I have a surprise for you.
Oh, okay.
A longtime friend of Reclamere, or four, also a female, is going to be on, and the two of you are going to banter back and forth about females, cybersecurity, and what it looks like in the 21st century. And that matters because we're starting to see more and more women come into these roles. In some cases, you have a brand new client that you're going to be onboarding here pretty shortly. Really are looking for what's the experience that you have working in not only in this industry, but how do I communicate out in a way where I can be heard? And really the messaging is positive and not that, that often we think that when we hear things. So I think it's going to be a good event in June 26th. Haven't picked out the date in May, although you'll see it on LinkedIn. And so in the spirit of Data Security Over Coffee, if you had one thing that you wanted people to take away today, other than the fact that I have a fish floating behind my head in this picture.
Oh my gosh, did one of them die?
No, I have one. I have one fish. And if the Pennsylvania Game Commission ever came here, I just found this out recently, by the way, that I'm breaking, and again, I could go to jail. I'm breaking the law. You are not permitted to take fish out of the wild in Pennsylvania and keep them in your fish tank. So that's really that's an artificially generated intelligenced fish that's in my fish tank. It's not really a fish. It's generated by AI, Claude, and some other thing or whatever. But anyway, in all seriousness, what's the thing that you want to leave people with before we wrap up this craziness?
Well, side note, number one thing is when you're breaking the law, don't announce it on your data security over coffee session.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Okay, next.
I think first and foremost right now, and I'm going to give you two things because, I can't just do what you ask me to do. Number one, you have got to educate your workforce that we know AI is out there. We know it can be an incredibly valuable tool. Please have a dialogue with us about what it is you want to use, how you're using it, and start to just educate around, especially if you're in a regulated space. When you're in a regulated space like healthcare, publicly traded company, manufacturing in the defense industrial base, you don't have the luxury of finding things out the hard way. So we need to let employees know this is on our radar, but you need to work with us and you need to share with us your use cases so that we can help you best do what you want to do in a safe way. Number two, it has never been more important than ever to understand your vendors and what it is how it is your vendors do what it is that they do. Everybody, if they have any AI component to them right now, you got to take a second look at them, and you got to find out, is it just hype? Are they just basically using a fancy algorithm that's not sharing my data anywhere, and they're just using that as marketing buzz? Or is it legit AI that's going to ingest my information and it's going to put it out there and put me at risk? You got to go back and look at these vendors and take a hard look at them. You got to, not only your existing ones, but you got to have this on your checklist when you're doing your vendor due diligence. Is there an AI component? If so, what does it look like? Where is it hosted? How does it work? What does it have to hook into, if anything? Those are probably the two big ones right now.
Okay.
As you are putting together your organization's artificial intelligence risk management strategy.
Well, thank you, Angie. And with that, we're going to call it a wrap. We will see you in May and June, of course.
Later.